My family is coming tomorrow, and they can't stand you. So start packing, and take that brat from your first marriage with you. He's not welcome either, said the mother-in-law, standing at the door at 9 a.m. But Marina just smiled and calmly said, "All right." The next day, when all 20 relatives arrived, they froze in shock at what they saw. Hi friends! Let's get to know each other. Write in the comments what city you're from and how you found our channel. Your support means a lot to us, so don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, enjoy the story. That morning in Marina's house started like any other. She was in the kitchen, making cheese pancakes for her 5-year-old son, Anton, who was still asleep in his room. The sky outside was gray, and it looked like it might rain, but the kitchen felt warm and cozy. The smell of vanilla mixed with the fresh coffee she had set out for her husband, Igor. He had already left for work after giving her a kiss goodbye. Her mother-in-law, Petrovna, who lived with them, hadn't come down yet. Normally, she would be grumbling about something by now, but today she was strangely quiet. Marina flipped another pancake when the doorbell rang. Who could it be this early? She wiped her hands on her apron and went to open the door. Petrovna was standing there, wearing her usual gray raincoat and holding a bag, like she was heading to the store. But her eyes were cold, and her lips were tight. Without even saying hello or taking off her shoes, she stepped inside and said, "My relatives are coming tomorrow, 20 of them, and they don't want you here. So pack your things and take your son. He's not welcome either." Marina stood there, holding the towel, frozen. Her mother-in-law's words hung heavy in the air. She looked at Petrovna, trying to figure out if she was serious. Nina stood tall, clearly waiting for tears or a fight. But Marina only narrowed her eyes, and then, to Nina's surprise, smiled. "Okay," she said calmly, almost cheerfully, and walked back to the kitchen. Nina was clearly thrown off. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, but in the end just muttered something and left, slamming the door behind her. Marina heard the yard gate creak, and only then did she finally let out a deep breath. She went back to the stove, but the cheesecakes were already burnt on one side. Oh well, she thought, taking the pan off the heat. She didn't feel hungry anymore. She sat at the table, staring at her coffee cup, which had gone cold. Petrovna never hid the fact that she didn't like Marina. From the day Igor brought her into the house, his mother had been making little digs about her cooking, about Anton being from a first marriage, even about her city girl habits. Marina put up with it because she loved Igor. And though he tried to keep the peace, he couldn't always stand up to his mother. But today's words weren't just another insult. This time, it felt like a final warning. Marina knew Petrovna's relatives from the nearby village were loud and many. Maybe not 20 people, but 10 could easily show up. But why did they supposedly hate her? Marina had only seen them a couple of times, and no one had been rude to her. Maybe Nina just wanted to scare her into leaving. Or maybe it was her way of showing who controlled the house. Marina stood up and looked out the window. Near the fence, Petrovna was talking to a neighbor, waving her hands like she was telling an exciting story. Marina felt anger bubbling inside her. She was sick of being the target, sick of having to explain herself, of just trying to live her life, raise her son, and be a good wife. And when it came to Anton, this stub as Nina cruelly called him, Marina would fight anyone to protect him. She sat back down, picked up her phone, and called her older sister. "Hey Lena, it's me. I need your help. Tomorrow's going to be a circus around here, and I want to make sure it's one no one forgets." Lena, who knew Marina always handled things on her own, instantly got worried. "What happened? Is it Petrovna again?" "Yeah," Marina sighed. "She said her relatives are coming tomorrow, and Anton, and I need to get out. But I've got a better idea." Marina started telling her sister the plan. With every word, her voice grew more confident. She had no plans to leave. If her mother-in-law wanted a fight, she'd get one, but not the kind she expected. By noon, Marina had packed their suitcases just in case she really had to leave. But that was only Plan B. She started putting Plan A into action as soon as Anton woke up. She told him there would be a big family party tomorrow. Excited, the little boy ran off to gather his toys. Marina smiled. Her son didn't deserve to be thrown out like that, and she'd do whatever it took to protect him. That evening, when Igor came home from work, Marina greeted him like everything was normal. She didn't mention anything about what had happened with his mom. She wanted to prepare everything first, on her own. Igor, tired from work, didn't notice anything unusual. He gave her a hug and asked how her day went. All good, Marina smiled. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Igor nodded, not really listening, and went to wash up. Marina, standing at the sink, was already imagining how tomorrow would play out. She didn't know exactly how Nina Petrovna's relatives would react, but she was sure their jaws would drop. By evening, the house sounded just like usual. Anton was playing with his toy cars in the living room. Igor was watching the news. Marina was doing the dishes, but inside, she was still boiling. She couldn't stop thinking about what her mother-in-law had said that morning. Especially the part about Anton, it hurt so deeply. She could barely hold back from storming into Nina Petrovna's room and shouting at her. But she knew anger wouldn't help. If she wanted to win, she had to stay calm and be smart. After Anton fell asleep, Marina sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and pen in hand. Her sister Lena had given her a few ideas over the phone, but Marina wanted to plan everything down to the smallest detail. She didn't want to start a fight or take silly revenge. Her plan was smarter than that. She wanted to show Nina Petrovna and her whole family that this house was hers, that this was her family, and no one had the right to tell her she didn't belong. The first thing she decided was, she wasn't leaving. Leaving would mean giving up. Instead, she would turn the visit from her mother-in-law's relatives into something Nina Petrovna would never forget. Lena had suggested inviting some of Marina's own friends and family over, so the house would be full of people on Marina's side. Marina liked that idea, but it wasn't enough. She needed a twist. Something unexpected that would make Nina's guests feel like they were the outsiders. Marina remembered how, at a recent family gathering, Nina's Aunt Galina kept bragging about how perfect their family was, so proper, so traditional. And Nina Petrovna always acted like her home was a perfect little museum, spotless and elegant. Well, Marina thought, we'll see about that. She decided to turn it into a challenge. If Nina loved to show off so much, Marina would show she could host just as well, maybe even better. But with a twist. She started making a to-do list. First, make the house shine. Not just clean it, make it sparkle. Second, prepare food. Not just snacks, but a full meal like a proper holiday feast. Third, invite her own people. And last, something special. A surprise that would leave Nina's relatives speechless. She didn't know what that surprise would be yet, but she trusted the idea would come. She called Lena again. They agreed Lena would come in the morning with her husband and kids, and bring their friend Sveta too, who always knew how to keep the party going. Then Marina called her cousins who lived nearby. She even convinced Aunt Valia, famous in the family for being bold and honest, to join them. By midnight, Marina knew there would be at least 15 of her people in the house the next day. The next morning, Marina got up at 6 o'clock. Igor was still sleeping, and Anton was curled up under the blanket. She went quietly to the kitchen and got to work. First, she made dough for pies, some with cabbage, some with meat, and some with apples, just how Aunt Valia liked them. Then she started chopping vegetables for salads, set some jellied meat to boil, and took meat from the freezer to make a roast. Marina worked quickly but carefully, humming an old song her mother used to sing. It helped her stay calm and focused. By 8 a.m., the house smelled amazing, and the living room looked spotless. She even wiped down the old cabinet that Nina Petrovna always called a family treasure. Marina wasn't just cleaning, she was setting the stage. When Igor came down to the kitchen, he stopped in surprise. "Marin, what's going on? Is it some kind of holiday?" She smiled without looking up from slicing cucumbers. "You could say that. Your mom's relatives are coming today, remember? I'm getting ready." Igor frowned. "Relatives? She didn't tell me anything." Marina shrugged, pretending it didn't bother her. "Well, she stopped by yesterday and said 20 people were coming. So, I figured I'd better prepare properly." Igor scratched the back of his head, clearly confused. But he didn't ask more questions. He had some coffee, kissed Marina goodbye, and left for work, saying he'd come home early. Marina watched him go. She didn't want to involve him just yet. If he found out his mother told her to leave with Anton, it would turn into a big fight. She wanted to handle it herself. By 10 a.m., her guests started arriving. Lena and her family came first. Her husband, Sergei, brought a box of homemade wine, and the kids ran off to play with Anton. Then came Sveta, loud and full of stories as always, filling the room with laughter. Aunt Valia arrived last, carrying a huge bag of smoked meat and a jar of honey from her bees. "Well, Marinka, what's all this about?" she asked, squinting. Lena answered, "Your mother-in-law is acting up again." Marina just nodded and poured some tea. "She is, but today I've got a little surprise for her." She told them her plan, and one by one, everyone smiled. Aunt Valia was especially excited. She immediately started sharing stories about how, back in the day, she had to put her mother-in-law in her place too. By noon, the house was completely ready. The table was full of food, pies, salads, jellied meat, fried potatoes with meat, pickles, fruit compote, and even a cake that Sveta had brought from the bakery. Marina's guests were all settled in the living room, chatting and laughing. Anton was running around with his cousins, and Marina stood by the window, watching the road. She knew Nina Petrovna's relatives would arrive any minute now. Whatever her mother-in-law had planned, Marina was ready for it. Her big surprise was already in place. This wasn't just a family meal. This was her message. "This is my home now. You don't get to throw me out." By 2 p.m., the sound of car engines filled the yard. Marina looked out and saw 3 cars pulling in. An old Lada, a beat-up minivan, and a shiny new SUV. People started getting out. Men in caps, women holding bags, and a couple of teenagers with headphones. Nina Petrovna was already at the gate, greeting them with a tight, fake smile. She clearly hadn't expected the house to be so full already. Marina noticed her mother-in-law glance toward the windows, and for a moment, it looked like she was nervous. "Here we go," Marina whispered, adjusting her apron. She turned to her guests in the living room and said loudly, "All right, everyone, let's get ready. Just smile, act normal, and make it look like everything is going exactly as planned." Lena gave her a wink. Aunt Valia chuckled. And Sveta, of course, laughed out loud. Anton ran up and grabbed Marina's hand. "Mom, are they here?" "The ones Grandma was talking about." Marina sat down in front of Anton, fixed his little t-shirt, and gently said, "Yes, sweetie, they're here.
But don't worry.
We're home, and everything's going to be just fine." She took his hand and walked with him to the front door. Her heart was racing, but on the outside, she looked calm, even cheerful. The plan she had come up with was risky, but it was too late to back out now. As Nina Petrovna's relatives started coming into the house, the hallway quickly filled up. First came Galina Ivanovna, the same aunt who always talked about rules and traditions, carrying a giant bag of pies. Behind her came her husband, Nina Petrovna's 2 brothers, their wives, and more relatives Marina only vaguely remembered from past gatherings. Just like her mother-in-law had said, there were about 20 people in total. They were laughing, talking loudly, starting to take off their coats, when suddenly, they stopped in their tracks. The living room looked like something out of a holiday movie. The table was packed from end to end with food, pies, salads, roast meat, jellied meat, jars of pickles, pitchers of compote, and even a bottle of homemade wine from Sergei. People were already sitting at the table. Lena, Sveta's family, Aunt Valia, Marina's cousins, and a few other friends Marina had invited. Everyone was smiling, laughing, completely at ease, as if this was their home. And right in the center of it all stood Marina, holding Anton's hand, smiling warmly. "Welcome," she said. "Come in, take a seat. We've been waiting for you." Nina Petrovna's relatives froze. Galina Ivanovna dropped her bag of pies, and it hit the floor with a heavy thud. One of the mother-in-law's brothers, a big guy named Victor, looked confused and muttered, "What is this, Neen? You didn't tell us there was already a whole party going on here." Nina Petrovna, who was the last to enter, turned pale. She looked from Marina to the table, then back at her relatives. It was clear she was trying to understand what was going on. Whatever plan she had to kick Marina out, it had just completely fallen apart. It was Marina who set this all up, Nina Petrovna finally said, but her voice sounded unsure. Marina didn't waste a second. She stepped forward and began guiding the guests. Come on in, don't be shy. Galina Ivanovna, sit here, right next to the pies. Victor, do you want one with meat or cabbage? Aunt Valia, could you scoot over and make a little room? Her voice was friendly, even warm, but there was a clear strength behind it. She wasn't just pretending to be the hostess. She was the hostess. And everyone saw it. Even Anton, who was usually shy around new people, was happily running between the guests, offering cups of compote. But Marina's real surprise, the one that would make jaws drop, was still waiting. She had prepared it late at night, when everyone else was asleep. She knew that Nina Petrovna always bragged to her relatives about her perfect home and her role as the guardian of family traditions. So Marina decided to add one small detail to quietly flip everything upside down. In the corner of the living room, right on that old sideboard that Nina Petrovna cleaned every week like it was sacred, sat a photo frame. But it didn't hold the usual old black and white family photo. Marina had replaced it. Now it showed a picture she had taken a few months ago, her, Igor, and Anton at a sunny picnic. They were laughing, eating grilled meat, flying a kite, just being happy together. Next to the photo lay a small handwritten card. It read, Our home, our family, welcome. When Galina Ivanovna sat down and noticed the photo, she coughed and nudged her husband. He looked at it and froze. Other relatives started glancing around, whispering quietly. Nina Petrovna saw the card too. Her lips pressed together so tightly, they turned white. She tried to keep her cool and said, So, Marina, this is how you chose to welcome us? Marina turned to her mother-in-law with the same calm smile. What's wrong, Nina Petrovna? You said family was coming, right? So I thought I should show what a real family welcome looks like. Her words sounded polite, but there was a clear challenge behind them. The relatives started exchanging awkward looks. Someone coughed. Someone else grabbed a pie just to have something to do with their hands. The air in the room felt heavy, like the jellied meat on the table. Then Aunt Valia, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up loud and clear. Well done, Marinka. This is how it should be. In our family, we treat guests like family. We keep the house warm and welcoming. That's the way. Her words lightened the mood a little. Lena jumped in, telling a funny story from their childhood. And slowly, the guests started to relax and join the conversation, though still a bit cautiously. But Nina Petrovna stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the photograph in the corner. Marina knew this was just the beginning. The full surprise hadn't happened yet. She was waiting for the perfect moment. Outside, the rain had started. The yard, packed with cars, looked like a scene from a strange play. Except this time, the star wasn't Nina Petrovna, it was Marina. The gathering was now in full swing. The living room was full of voices and laughter. Spoons clinked, chairs squeaked. Someone laughed loudly at one of Sveta's jokes. The kids, including Anton, were running around playing tag. Marina moved between the kitchen and the table, pouring compote, bringing out more pies, winking at Lena, who was chatting easily with Nina Petrovna's relatives as if nothing was unusual. At first glance, it looked like any normal family celebration, cozy, a bit loud, filled with the smell of food and the sound of people talking. But underneath the surface, Marina could feel the tension still there, like a quiet flame under the table. Nina Petrovna was sitting at the head of the table, but her usual confidence was gone. She pushed her salad around with her fork, answered a few questions from relatives, and kept glancing first at the photo, then at Marina. Her guests were eating and talking, but they didn't seem fully comfortable either. Even Galina Ivanovna, who normally led all the conversations, was oddly quiet today. Every so often, she would glance at the photo and the card that read, Our home, our family. And each time, her face tightened into a frown. Marina knew that her move with the photo and the postcard had already hit the target. It wasn't just a gentle message, it was a clear challenge. It was like she was saying, "This is my home. This is my family. You're the guests here." But the biggest surprise, the one meant to completely flip everything, was still waiting. She was saving it for the right moment. She needed everyone to relax first. She waited until the meal reached that point where people started making toasts and sharing old stories. That's when Igor came home. He walked into the house still wearing his work jacket and stopped in the doorway, completely frozen. His eyes went wide when he saw the crowded living room, the full table, and Marina smiling as she poured tea. Anton ran up to him, grabbed his arm, and shouted,
"Dad!"
"There are so many people. There's pies, cake, and everyone's so happy." Igor looked at Marina with a mix of surprise and confusion. It was clear he had no idea what was going on. Marina gave him a calm nod, signaling that everything was fine, and pointed to the empty chair next to Lena. Igor sat down slowly, still looking around like he'd walked into someone else's party. "Marin, what is this?" he whispered. "I'll explain later," she said gently. "Just eat. Rest." Igor picked up a pie, but it was obvious his mind was still spinning, trying to figure out what was happening. Nina Petrovna, seeing her son, straightened up and tried to take back control. "Igor, my son, the family's here, like I said. And Marina has prepared everything," she said with forced confidence. But her words just hung in the air. Then Aunt Valia, sitting across from her, coughed loudly and said, "Yes, Nina. Your daughter-in-law did an amazing job. This table's fit for a wedding. I'm honestly jealous." The other relatives nodded. Someone even said the aspic was delicious. But their compliments sounded awkward. They clearly hadn't expected this. They thought they were coming to a normal family lunch where Nina Petrovna would be the center of attention. Instead, they walked into a perfectly prepared celebration where Marina was clearly in charge. And right at that moment, Marina stood up and raised a glass of compote. "Friends," she said with a warm smile, "let's drink to family. To the fact that this house is always warm and cozy," Marina said, raising her glass, "and that everyone who comes here feels like they're home." Her voice was warm and sincere, but there was a deeper meaning in her words, one that Nina Petrovna and her relatives clearly picked up on. Everyone raised their glasses, but the toast felt awkward and a bit forced. Then Marina knew it was time for her final move. She gently set down her glass and walked over to the sideboard. Everyone in the room turned to watch her. She reached behind a vase of flowers and picked up another picture frame, one no one had noticed before. It was an old photo she had found in Nina Petrovna's photo album. In it, a young Nina Petrovna stood next to her husband, holding a baby Igor in her arms. They were smiling, standing right in front of this very house. "I found this," Marina said, holding the photo up so everyone could see. "This house has always been a place for family, and I want to keep it that way." Then she gave a nod to Lena, who smiled and walked into the kitchen. A moment later, she returned holding a large bundle wrapped in cloth. Marina put the picture frame back and began unwrapping the bundle. When the cloth fell away, everyone gasped. It was a handmade embroidered tapestry, not professionally done, but made with love and care. It showed a picture of their house surrounded by trees, and stitched above the roof were the words, "Family is our hearth." Marina had started working on it 6 months ago, in secret. It was meant to be a surprise gift for Igor on their wedding anniversary. But last night, she decided it would be the perfect finishing touch for today. She had even stitched in all their names, hers, Igor's, Anton's. And yes, even Nina Petrovna's, woven right into the design. It wasn't just a gift. It was a message that this was her family, no matter the past, no matter the tension. The room went completely silent. Galina Ivanovna put a hand to her chest. Victor cleared his throat. One of the aunts even seemed to wipe away a tear. Nina Petrovna stared at the tapestry, her face slowly turning red. She looked like she didn't know what to say. Finally, Igor broke the silence. "You made this?" he asked, his voice full of surprise, as if seeing Marina in a new light. All by myself, Marina replied softly. I just wanted something to remind us all that we're one family. The room was completely silent for a moment, until Anton ran up to the tapestry, pointed at the stitching, and said excitedly,
Mom.
That's me. And here's you, and here's Dad. His cheerful voice broke the tension, and the mood in the room began to lift. The guests started talking again, coming closer to look at the tapestry. They complimented Marina, asked how long it took, and admired the details. But Nina Petrovna said nothing. She just kept staring at the tapestry, and in her eyes was something new. Not anger, not bitterness, but something that looked a lot like shame. Marina understood in that moment. Her plan had worked. She hadn't just welcomed the relatives. She had shown them that this was her home. And no one had the right to push her or Anton out. But she also knew the most important part was still to come. She needed to talk to Igor, really talk, and decide what they were going to do next. Because even with all the smiles and celebration, her mother-in-law's harsh words still stung deep in her heart. The gathering continued, but the atmosphere in the house had changed. The tapestry had become the center of attention. People walked up to it, admired the patterns, touched the names stitched in, and praised Marina's talent and patience. Even Galina Ivanovna, who almost never complimented anyone, muttered, You don't see something like this in just any house. Anton proudly ran from person to person, telling everyone, My mom made it, all by herself. His happy voice filled the room and made the grown-ups smile. But Marina stayed thoughtful. She knew the most important conversation hadn't happened yet. Nina Petrovna still sat quietly. Since seeing the tapestry, she hadn't touched her food. She just sat there, fidgeting with a napkin, lost in thought. Her relatives seemed to feel the tension too. They avoided looking directly at her, speaking more softly now. And Igor, he was quiet as well. He kept glancing from Marina to his mother, then to the tapestry, and back again, trying to figure out what had really happened and what it meant. Later that evening, when the kids got tired and went to play in another room, and the adults were busy clearing dishes, Marina knew it was time to talk. She caught Igor's eye and gave him a small nod toward the kitchen. He understood right away and quietly followed her. Lena noticed and quickly pulled Aunt Valia and Sveta into conversation to keep the others distracted. Soon, the living room was buzzing again with small talk and laughter. In the kitchen, it was quiet. Only the soft ticking of the wall clock could be heard. Marina closed the door and turned to face Igor. He looked confused, but also concerned. There was a mix of worry and something else in his eyes, maybe respect. Marina, what's going on? He asked in a low voice. You've set up this whole party, the tapestry. I don't get it. Mom said her relatives were coming, but you didn't have to go this far. Marina took a deep breath. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but she couldn't keep it in anymore. Igor, yesterday morning, your mom came to me and told me to pack my things and leave with Anton. Igor's face froze. She said her relatives, 20 of them, can't stand me. And she even said Anton was just a leftover from my first marriage. Marina paused, her voice shaking slightly, but she forced herself to go on. I was shocked. I could have packed up and left. I even had the bags ready. But then I thought, why should I? This is our home, Igor.
Mine.
Yours. Anton's. And I'm not going to let anyone push us out. So, I decided if she's bringing her people, then I'll welcome them properly. But I'll also make sure she knows I'm not backing down. Igor stood there in silence, staring at the floor. His hands clenched into fists. Marina could see how angry he was, how hard he was trying to hold it in. He had always tried to balance things, stuck between his wife and his mother. But now, there was no middle ground. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked finally, his voice soft but tense. Because I wanted to handle it myself, Marina said honestly. And because you should have seen it for yourself, how she treats me, how she talks to me. I'm tired, Igor. I've been putting up with it for too long. If you want us to stay, Marina said softly, you need to talk to her. Right now. Igor nodded. And in that moment, Marina saw a look in his eyes she hadn't seen in a long time. Determination. He walked out of the kitchen, and she heard him call for his mother. Nina Petrovna got up from the table slowly, clearly not happy, and followed him into the hallway. Marina stayed in the kitchen listening. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could tell. Igor's voice was calm but firm, and his mother's sounded high-pitched and unsure. It didn't sound like her usual bossy tone. A few minutes later, Igor came back. His face was serious, but he looked more at peace. He walked over, took Marina's hand, and said quietly, "I talked to her. She admitted she went too far. She said she didn't really want you to leave. She just wanted to feel like she was still in charge, so her relatives would respect her. I told her that if she ever tries something like that again, I'll ask her to leave instead." Marina looked at him, trying to read his face. It was never easy for him to go against his mom, but she could see it now. He meant every word. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Igor looked into her eyes and said, "From now on, we're a family. You, me, and Anton. And if Mom wants to stay here, she'll have to accept that." Marina nodded slowly. She wasn't sure if Nina Petrovna would really change. But Igor taking her side like this, it meant everything. By then, the guests had started leaving. Nina Petrovna's relatives thanked Marina for the meal, praised the food, and Galina Ivanovna even gave her a warm hug and whispered, "You're a wonderful girl." Nina Petrovna went to her room without saying goodbye, but Marina didn't stop her. Her battle was over. After the last guest left, and Lena and Aunt Valia helped clean up the dishes, Marina stepped outside into the yard. The rain had stopped, and the air smelled fresh, like wet grass. Anton ran out after her, holding his toy car. "Mom," he asked, "are we always going to welcome guests like this now?" Marina laughed and hugged him. "I don't know, sweetheart. But this time, they'll definitely remember." Igor came out too, wrapping his arms around both of them. "They'll remember me too," he said with a smile. "Because you're with me." He paused for a moment, then added, "You're the real lady of the house." Marina smiled, looking back at their home, where the lights were still glowing in the windows. The tapestry still hung proudly on the living room wall, a reminder of what she had done and what she had claimed as hers. She didn't know exactly what would happen next with Nina Petrovna, but one thing was clear. This house was hers now, and no one, not even her mother-in-law, would ever make her feel like she didn't belong. Nights settled over the village. Windows lit up one by one. And in Marina's home, it was warm, it smelled like pies. And even after everything that happened, there was a quiet feeling in the air. Hope.